That's the technical meaning. What did it mean before we used it in that definition? Like, what does it just mean if you look it up in the dictionary, what's the linguistic meaning? To abstain or to refrain from doing something, to not do something, right? So that's the linguistic meaning. And usually the technical meaning or the Islamic law meaning or the Sharia meaning is related to the linguistic meaning. So in the case of Sawm, we're talking about fasting from sunrise to sunset and staying away from food and drink and relations with our spouses and doing it with the intention to earn the reward from Allah, right? So similarly, what does the word Hajj mean? Hajja yahujju. Linguistically, in the Arabic language, what does Hajj, Hajja yahujju mean? Anyone know? Pilgrimage, no. It means either to intend something, like intend something, to intend, maybe to intend to go on a journey, or it could mean to go on a journey, or to intend to achieve an objective. So it's something that you're doing. So Hajj, for us, is of course the annual pilgrimage that comes up in the last month of the Islamic year that Muslims are required to do once in their lifetime if they're able to, and fulfill certain rites. So they go to Mina, they go to Arafah, they go to Muzdalifah, etc. That's the technical definition. So linguistically, zakah yazku, it means to grow. It means to increase. It also means to purify or to cleanse, okay? Now, before we get into what it means legally and technically, I have a question for you. Is there a difference between the meaning of zakah and sadaqah? Are they the same thing or are they two different things? So just a raise of hands, who says zakah and sadaqah is the same thing? Okay. Who says they're different things? Okay. The first group is right and the second group is right, but we'll explain why. Okay. So I want to be clear about this. So let's go through, first of all, the way that we use the terms zakah and sadaqah nowadays. In common vocabulary and common terms, these words have different meanings. Okay. So for those that say there's a difference between sadaqah and zakah, what's the difference? Why did you say they're different? Zakah is obligatory and sadaqah is voluntary. Okay, good. Difference number one. What's another difference? Zakah is a set amount that you have to pay. Sadaqah is something you choose. You could pay 0, some other amount, no minimum, no maximum, right? Basically. Okay. So one is mandatory, zakah is mandatory, sadaqah is not. Zakah has a fixed amount, sadaqah does not. What's another difference? Sure, but that has to do again with paying mandatory. Yeah, it goes back to being mandatory. So zakah you pay every year, sadaqah you don't have to. You pay to a certain group of people. Zakah can only be paid to certain categories of people. Sadaqah can be given to anybody. Go ahead. Zakah you can also pay anytime. You don't have to pay it once a year. We'll get into that. Yeah. The three main differences, so legally speaking, zakah is a mandatory portion of wealth. It's something that you have to pay. That's distributed as charity to specific categories of people, not to everyone, to some people. You can only give it to some people.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah.
Okay. And then, so number one, it is mandatory. Number two, it can only be paid to specific categories, and it applies to people who meet a certain amount of wealth. Okay, so there's a difference between zakah and sadaqah. Now, having said that, so it's important to understand because some people think sadaqah, zakah, same thing. I just pay whatever I want, whenever I want. It's considered zakah. No, zakah is something very, very specific. Now, sometimes the word sadaqah, though, when it's used in the Quran or when it's used in the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, actually means zakah. So when you're reading Quran or you're reading a saying of the Prophet ﷺ, you have to know, is it referring to zakah or is it referring to sadaqah? Even though the word that's used is sadaqah. The word zakah is only used for zakah. But the word sadaqah can be used for either one depending on what it is. Okay? But for our purposes, zakah is this obligatory thing and sadaqah is the optional thing. Okay? Any questions? I want to be clear on that. We're talking about zakat today, specifically zakatul mal, the obligatory amount that's due on an annual basis. Okay. Why give zakah? We could spend the whole day talking about this, but I just want to provide some brief bullet points, inshallah, on why we should give zakah. Number one, it's a command of Allah. And that should be enough for us, right? Allah said, give zakah. You would think that would be enough. The word zakah itself comes in the Quran 32 times. Almost all of those times where Allah is referring to zakah, it comes along with salah, or prayer, or namaz, or munz. So you have prayer and charity are coming together. In fact, Allah starts off in the Quran with Surah Baqarah. He says, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. This is the book. لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. There's no doubt in it. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It's a guidance for those who have taqwa. And then he explains who the people of taqwa are, which are الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. These are the people who believe in the unseen. What's the unseen? Allah's talking about Day of Judgment. He's talking about hellfire. He's talking about paradise, Jannah, Jahannam. Because when we think about Jannah and Jahannam, what happens? We start getting scared about Jahannam and we look forward to Jannah, right? It motivates us. So why do we care about the ghaib? Allah says, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, because it motivates us. It motivates us to do good so that we can have a good afterlife, right? And then he continues, وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ, and those who pray, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, and those who give charity, right? So it starts off like that. And then many, many times in the Quran, Allah says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ, give, maintain your prayer and give zakah. He says, وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَ الزَّكَاةَ. He's referring to the people who pray, who give zakah. وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ, in a different way, referring to the plural. Even وَأَقِمْنَا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتِينَا الزَّكَاةَ, talking about females. وَالْمُقِيمِينَ الصَّلَاةَ وَالْمُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ. So it comes again and again and again together. Prayer and zakah come many times together. And so when did zakah start? Anyone have an idea of when zakah started in the world? A date? After Hijrah? Okay. So why then does Surah Maryam say, Isa alayhi salam, وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ? Right? Isa alayhi salam, he advised people to pray and give zakah. Also, Ismail alayhi salam is described, وَكَانَ يَأْمُرُ أَهْلَهُ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ. He used to command his people to pray and give zakah. So zakah is something, in fact, all of trivia question or an answer, all of the 5 pillars of Islam have been around since the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam. That's why you see zakah being mentioned with all of the different prophets. You see salah being mentioned with all of the different prophets. What did Musa alayhi salam get first? He got salah, right? And zakah and so on. وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَاعِيلُ, right? They built the Kaaba. Why? So that people could do tawaf, so that people could do sajda over there, right? So Hajj, zakah, prayer, all of these things have been around since the time of Prophet Ibrahim. It's not something new to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's not something new to us. It's something that's been around for a long time. So, yes, it's a pillar of Islam. We all know the 5 pillars. And we all know that our Islam is not complete without it. In fact, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, what does Allah say? Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Why does Allah say Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum? By the way, is that the last verse that was revealed? Sorry? Yeah, so it's not the last verse that was revealed. The last verse was in Surah Baqarah. But anyway, it's one of the last verses, right? Why did Allah say Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum? Why? What was the context for the verse? Anyone know? This happened because the Prophet ﷺ finally got to do Hajj. Finally. He had Salah, he had Shahada, he had Salah, he had Sawm, he had Zakah, but he hadn't done Hajj yet. When he finally had the opportunity to do Hajj, he was able to fulfill all of the pillars of Islam like Prophet Ibrahim had, like the other prophets had. So Allah says, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Now we have completed and perfected for you your religion. So without Hajj, the Prophet ﷺ had not completed his religion, right? So anyway, importance of the 5 pillars. Each of the pillars has a purpose. Salah connects us to Allah, okay? Fasting, it increases our taqwa. Allah says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ in the Quran. Hajj gives us patience, gives us sabr. The purpose of zakah, the main purpose of zakah is to disconnect us from this life, to remind us that this isn't the life that's important. Kind of disconnect yourself from this life and focus more on the afterlife. Okay, it helps you worship better when you think about things that way. And also, and this is a scary part, so there's a lot of encouragement to do zakah, right? Because it has these benefits, but there's also severe consequences of not giving zakah. And there's numerous ayat and ahadith and sayings of the Prophet ﷺ about this, but I'll just suffice with one. And it's one that I struggle with every time I say it because it scares me, really scares me. Allah says in the Quran in Surah At-Tawbah, verse 34, الَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ. Those who just keep hoarding gold and silver, just keep collecting money and cryptocurrency and everything, just keep collecting. Okay? وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَهَا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And they don't spend it. They don't give their zakah. What does Allah say? فَبَشِّرْهُم. Give them glad tidings. Give them good news. What do you mean good news? No. Allah's being sarcastic. فَبَشِّرْهُم بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Warn them of a painful torment. But that's not where the verse stops. I mean, that would be scary enough, right? Be warned of a painful torment. Allah continues. And Allah says, يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمْ. It's very scary. That gold and the silver that you're collecting in this life, that you're not paying zakah on, that gold and that silver will be taken and it will be heated up in the fires of hell. Okay? يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمْ. It will be heated up. فَتُكْوَى بِهَا جِبَاهُهُمْ وَجُنُوبُهُمْ وَظُهُورُهُمْ. And that gold and silver will be taken, and your foreheads and your sides and your backs will be branded with it, with this hot gold and silver. And it will be said to you, هَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُمْ. This is what you used to hoard. This is what you didn't pay zakah on. هَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُمْ فَذُوقُوا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْنِزُونَ. So now taste what you didn't pay zakah on. Okay. Very, very scary verse. Like, just makes me shiver thinking about it. Anyway, zakah purifies our soul from greed. You know, when we have to give, it inculcates in us a sense of gratitude. It takes away greed. It makes us have to take money out of our pocket and give to someone else. There's so many psychological benefits to zakat too. It makes us happy, makes us feel good. It connects us with what's going on in the world. Sometimes we live in our bubbles. We live in nice cities with nice houses, and we don't see people who are in need. So it connects us with the people, especially when you give to people hand to hand. When you don't go through an organization and you give directly to those who are needy, when you go give to people, you see the situation they're in, and you realize, you know what, zakah is how many percent? What percent do you have to pay zakah? 2.5%, right? You give 2.5%, you feel guilty, you feel embarrassed. Look at this person's situation, I'm only giving 2.5%, makes you give more. It removes jealousy, it removes envy, because the poor are connecting with the rich, right? And they don't sit there and go, oh, those rich, they don't do anything for us. It connects people, it removes hatred, removes enmity. And of course, it purifies our wealth, right? That's one of the meanings of zakah, something that purifies. So when we're earning money, a lot of times in our jobs, in our businesses, we make mistakes. Sometimes we're not perfect, we have issues. And so zakah removes the impurity. It purifies the wealth that we have, puts barakah in our wealth. In fact, Allah says in the Quran, He says, يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا وَيُرْبِي الصَّدَقَاتِ. That Allah does what? Allah destroys riba. Riba is interest. So we're actually collecting money, but that money has no blessing in it. That money is just destroyed. وَيُرْبِي الصَّدَقَاتِ. And you're giving away zakah and sadaqah, you're giving that away. It feels like you're losing money, but Allah is actually increasing money. You get more wealth in this life. Allah gives you more, and He blesses your wealth more. And then, of course, there's economic benefit, right? Zakah is Islam's welfare system. It bridges the gap between the rich and the poor. And it promotes the circulation of wealth. It actually boosts the economy. For those that have studied macroeconomics, you know that how do you get the economy to flourish? How do you get it to boom? You get people to spend money. Because when someone goes and spends money, then it creates a job for someone else, right? It creates products, it creates services, it benefits society. So it causes circulation of wealth. And it also, when you start realizing you have to give zakah on your money, and you're going to lose 2.5% every year, it forces you to invest that money so that you can make up for some of that, right? Especially nowadays when there's so much inflation, you just want to be losing money to zakah and inflation. You want to be spending that money. Islam doesn't want your money to just sit there useless. It wants you to spend that money and be productive, create jobs. Okay, so how do we determine who should pay zakah? A few conditions. Number one, zakah is only for Muslims. So non-Muslims don't have to pay zakah. Okay. Number two, you have to have a minimum amount of money. If you don't have that minimum amount of money, you don't have to pay zakah. That amount is called nisab. And then that money you must have in your possession for a year. More specifically, an Islamic lunar year. Okay, so if you have a certain amount of money and you've had that money for a year, then you have to pay zakah. It's an eligibility criteria. Okay, so how much money do you need to have? There's two standards. The Prophet ﷺ said either 20 dinars or 200 dirhams. Dinars were golden coins and dirhams were silver coins. Okay, so if you translate that in today's terms, that's 87.48 grams. Some people say 85 grams. And then silver, 612 grams. Some people say 595 grams. Okay, what does that mean practically? You don't have to know the grams and the dinars and the dirhams and all of this. You can just say it's about $5,300. Okay, so the question becomes, why did I circle the gold and not the silver? Because the gold works out to about $5,300, whereas the silver works out to about $500. I just looked up these values today. Okay, the silver is about $500. And at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the value of 20 dinars and 200 dirhams was roughly the same. But silver has devalued a lot over time while gold has gone up in value. So in our time, there's a big difference. Okay, there's a lot of discussion about this and rulings about this. And basically, Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi and others have said the better way to go is to take the gold standard based on kind of how silver has devalued over time. Okay, so if you have $5,300 of zakatable assets, and we'll talk about what that means. If you have $5,300, then you have to pay zakah. Okay, and then you have to hold that for an Islamic year, which is 354 days. Okay, now zakah is an obligation on every person. So a husband has to pay on his money, a wife has to pay on her money. Okay, so question, do children have to pay zakah? Anyone? Who says yes? Who says no? Is everyone else sleeping? Do children have to pay zakah? Okay, so the majority opinion, the Malikis, the Shafi'is, the Hanbalis, they say the children have to pay zakah. Only the Hanafis say that children don't have to pay zakah. Now, the vast, let me just say, the vast majority of people say you have to pay zakah for children. So how do children pay zakah? Well, it's sort of a trick question, because if you're a child, you're 7 years old, and you have money sitting in a bank account, like you're not even going to know to pay zakah, right? You're not going to pay zakah. But assuming that that money is in the custody of someone who's taking care of you, that person should be investing your money and then paying zakah. So if you're a 6-year-old and you have a bank account and no one took care of it for you, yeah, you don't have to pay zakah, right? But if you are taking care of a 6-year-old because they're your daughter, your son, your nephew, an orphan, whatever, then invest their money and pay zakah on it, okay? The other question I have for you is, when is zakah due? What date is zakah due? Who says 1st of Muharram? Anyone? Who says 1st of Ramadan? When is it due then? Yeah, any time that all of a sudden 354 days passed since you had the money. That's it. So if it happened to be in Safar, it had to be in Shawwal, whatever, it doesn't matter, as long as 1 year has passed. Do you get more reward for paying zakah in Ramadan? Hope so. You know, it's an obligatory deed. It has to be paid all year. I don't believe you get more reward by paying zakah in Ramadan, because the zakah collectors at the time of the Khulafa and so on, they used to collect zakah all year long. So if the Sahaba knew from the Prophet ﷺ that it's better to pay zakah in Ramadan only, they would have paid in Ramadan only, but they paid zakah all year long. Okay. Yeah.
So that 354 days, does it get reset the last time you paid, and then that gets on?
Yes, the 354 days, well, not the last time you paid. Let's say today is the first day you had $5,300, right? Now Zakah is due. So the next time, 354 days pass from today.
Let's say you maintain that about right?
Yes.
So it's arbitrary.
Yes. It's here every 354 days. Yeah. So today's what 9th of 9th, 8th of Ramadan? Right. So if you paid zakat today, it would again be due on the 8th of Ramadan. That's the cycle. Okay. So now we're going to get into, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, there are scholars. Sorry, the question was, are there scholars who believe there is more reward to pay in Ramadan? There are people who believe it is more reward to pay in Ramadan, but that tends to be a minority opinion. And correct, prayer is, you do get more reward for prayer in Ramadan, right? The fard prayers. But the reason for that is fard prayers are fard like all the time anyway, right? So Allah boosts that for you. Zakat doesn't have a specific time. And if it was better, we would have something from the Quran, we would have something from the Hadith, something from the Prophet ﷺ, some action of the Sahaba, something like that to indicate that zakat is better paid in Ramadan. And the thing is, people are needy all year long. So if we just save it up for Ramadan, we're kind of not recognizing that fact. We're missing that point. We'll get to that. You can pay it in installments. You don't have to pay all at one time. Yep.
Now, today is 2022, so it's already 1 year. But let's say in July of 2020, instead of 5,300, it increased to 600.
Yep.
So
we'll go through it. We'll go through it very soon. Very soon. We'll go through that. Sorry, question, Ustad? Okay. Okay. So let's go through some examples because this will help. Okay. And I'll ask you. So we have nisab, and I said nisab is about what, $5,300, right? Something like that. Okay. So this is a person's zakatable assets. This is the money that they have. And you can see it starts before Ramadan first. So this person pays in, let's just keep it easy. This person had $1,000 before Ramadan last year. Okay. And then their money went up to 2,000 and 4,000 and then 5,000 and whatever. And this is the nisab. Does this person have to pay zakah? Anyone says this person has to pay zakah? Why not? They were below nisab the whole time. Okay, this is easy, right? This is going to get harder. So get ready. Okay. Second example. Okay. The person started, they had no money, but then they got some money and they got more. You know, alhamdulillah, they've been able to save up quite a bit. Now it's time for them, it's Ramadan first. They're above nisab. Do they pay zakah? No? Why not? They just got the money. It hasn't been a year. Okay? So far, so good? Easy, right? We can manage this. Okay. Now, it has to get harder. Okay. So now, last year, first of Ramadan, all of a sudden, on Ramadan 1st, they got like $5,500 or something. I don't know what that is. And then they ended up this year, you know, 6,000, something like that. Do they have to pay zakah? Yes. Why? 1 year has passed. Okay. Easy? Ask questions if you're confused, okay? Okay, easy. No, it's due now. So if you got the money a year ago and it's been a year, it's due now. Oh, okay. Well, I'll answer that. Okay. The question becomes, okay, so you get more money, like let's say next month. Let's say I have this amount of money and then I get some more money next month. Is that the question? Yeah. Yep. Yep. Okay. If I have the money, if I had the money at whatever date I got the money, the $5,300, I pay exactly 1 year after that. Okay, that's when it becomes due. Now, let's say 2 days after that date, I get more money. I was going to say I win the lottery, but that would be haram. Let's say like I get a gift, right? Somebody gives me a gift, and now I have that. I got that 2 days. So let's say I pay zakat, because here I got the first amount on Ramadan 1st, right? Last year. And then we're Ramadan 1st this year, I paid zakah. Now, 2nd of Ramadan, someone comes and gives me a gift, says, here's $5,000. The zakat on that isn't due until Ramadan 1st of next year. Okay, so once I have the date, I just keep going by that date. It's easy. 354 days, 354, 354.
So on the, for example, Ramadan is actually pay on 6,000, right? Because your money did fluctuate, but that when you ended up on that day,
Yeah, we'll get to how much to pay, but yes, you're going to pay on 6,000. Okay, you're going to pay on the 6,000, not the. It doesn't. You don't pay on this amount. You don't pay on that amount. You pay on whatever the amount is on the day that it's due. That's whatever the bank balance is. You pay on that.
Wouldn't it be easier if you go to a slide and it says assets? And you're saying income here.
Yeah.
And there's a distinction between the two.
We'll talk about that in a second, inshallah. Yeah, it would be easier, but I'm not very good with slides.
so on this example, I have 5,100 on Ramadan 2022, Ramadan 2023, I have 6,000. I am going to be paying zakat on 6,000.
If you have 5,100, you said over here, and then you have 6,000 here, you're not even eligible for zakah then, because it wasn't Ramadan 1st when you went above nisab, you were below nisab. Oh, 5,400. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So you would pay on 6,000. Yes.
On 6,000.
Yes, you would pay on 6,000. Okay. So now we're going to get trickier. Okay. So now I had the money. Actually, I messed up this chart. Let's say I stayed up. Let's say even here in Ramadan 1st, I had money above nisab. I made a mistake in the chart. So let's say I had money, and then all of a sudden it goes down. Then I have 0, maybe even less than 0. Maybe I owe people, but it goes to 0, let's say, and then I come back up to nisab. Do I pay? Yes? Yes? So in this particular case, all of the madhahib, all of the scholars say that you do not pay zakah because the amount of wealth that you had went to 0. So if it went to 0, then you don't have zakah. You never paid zakah. Basically, you had the money, you got the money, you came down here, and then now that you're above nisab, it's like before Ramadan, let's say like a week before Ramadan or whatever that is, from that date, reset, a day, 1 year from that, whatever balance is, you pay zakah on that. Okay? Any questions on this?
It doesn't have to go to 0. Let's say it went to 1,000.
Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Any questions on 0 or less than 0? Okay, because the next one is a little bit trickier. So I had money, I had enough to be above nisab, and then it went down, but then it went back up, but then it went back down, and it went back up, and now I'm again at nisab. Who says yes? Everybody who says yes, raise their hands. Do I pay zakah? Yes? 2, that's it? 3? Who says no? Okay. So there's actually a difference of opinion, okay? There's actually a difference of opinion on the Hanafis versus the Shafi'is and the Malikis and so on. There's a difference of opinion. The Hanafis say you have to pay zakah. Everyone else says you don't have to, okay? They say you have to pay zakah because what they care about is they actually don't care about the chart unless it hits 0. Unless it hits 0, as it can go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. You don't care. All you care is that at the beginning you had more than nisab, and at the end you have more than nisab, and that's it. You don't actually look at the chart in the middle unless it goes to 0. Okay? The safest opinion to follow on this, the safest opinion would be the Hanafi opinion. Okay? Because whether the money is going up, because we know this happens all the time, right? We will pay we'll pay a bill and all of a sudden the bank balance goes down and then we get a gift and it goes up and then it goes up and up. So if you're like going up and down around that value, I would say the safest thing to do is just pay zakah on it. Okay? If you have had a date where you hit nisab and then a year has passed and now you look at the date and you still have more than nisab, pay zakah on that. Okay? Any questions? Because this is the last chart I have. And then we get into calculating zakah. So this just tells us who has to pay zakah. Now that you know you have to pay zakah, the question becomes, how do you calculate it? And we'll get to that. What are the other opinions? Yeah, so the Hanafi opinion is that you pay zakah. And then the other opinion is that you went up, you went down. So as soon as you went down, that resets. Now on this date, it started again. The clock started again, right? Because you went above. And then when you went down again, it got reset again. So then on this date, the clock starts again. Okay, so that would be the Shafi'i, Hanbali, Maliki opinion. I'm not trying to like divide up the madhabs and get into madhab debates. I just want you to be aware in case I'm telling you something and you're like, but you know, I heard something else or I read something else. There's two opinions on this matter. And my encouragement, my strong encouragement is to follow the Hanafi opinion on this one. It's easier in terms of like looking at the balances. You don't have to worry about up, down, and it's also safer. And this is a pillar of faith we're talking about, right? Go ahead.
But this one is like you're saying minimum 5,000. Right?
Yes.
But most of us have more.
Most of us have more than that.
So we have to pay.
Yeah. This is for people who are revolving around 5,300. Okay. So I think most of the people in this room probably, inshallah, have more than that, you know. But some people don't, right? We have some ladies in the room who don't have that much savings. We have some men who don't have that much savings, right? We're living in difficult times. Inflation is crazy right now, right? So it's good to understand this, but let's assume many of us have to pay zakah, and maybe that's why we're here, is to understand that if we are eligible for zakah, how then do you calculate zakah? Okay? Yep.
And you base that for all, or you look at the lowest in the curve above the sun.
How to calculate, we'll talk about. Okay? We'll talk about. Okay. So question, what was, somebody already answered this. What percentage zakah do we pay? 2.5%. Okay. So if I make $100,000 a year, how much zakah do I pay? 2,500. I make, my salary is $100,000 a year. How much zakah do I pay? Some people are saying zakah is on savings. Any other opinions? Savings? Not my salary? Sure? Okay. So, let me change it. I make 100,000 a year, and I manage to save 10,000 of it. How much zakah do I pay? So this year, I made $100,000. Or let's say last year, this year, I don't know. Last year, I made $100,000, and I was able to, of the $100,000, I saved, I added to my bank account 10,000. How much zakah do I pay? $250? Okay. So I have two opinions. Some people are saying, hey, it's just 2.5%. What's the big deal? Some people are making it more complicated. So which one's the right answer? Okay. So yeah. So these are two very important points to note. Zakah is not on your income. Wait, are any of you farmers? Anybody here farmers? Do you have like farmland or agriculture? Camels? You have no camels? Anyone have like anyone have hidden treasure? Minerals, mines, nickel, cadmium, oil? Like do you have oil under your land or something like that? No? Do you have like a gold mine, diamond mine, something like that? Okay. So most of us, I think we either have a job or a business or both, right? Alhamdulillah. So most of us have a job or a business. We're not farmers. We don't fall into these other categories. So let's take all that out. Keep it simple. Zakat is not paid on what you earn. Zakat is paid on your savings. Zakat is not paid on what I saved this year. Zakat is paid on my total savings, all of the money that I've saved up. Okay? And we'll talk about that in more detail. But it's not on income, it's not on salary, it's not like tax, it's not like, your W2 or 1099. It's not on income, it's on savings. Okay? So the question becomes, what do we pay zakat on? What savings do we pay zakat on? So before we talk about what we pay zakat on, it's actually a little bit easier to talk about what we don't pay zakat on. Okay? So zakah is supposed to be on money that's extra. This is money that you're not using on a day-to-day basis. Okay? In fact, the word nisab itself hints to that, because it hints that it's something that's above and beyond, like extra. It's more than what you need. It's more than the necessities that you have. Okay? So the things that you don't pay zakah on: your house, your furniture, your food, your clothing, your cars, your things that you use every day, your phone, your laptop, okay? All the daily things that you use all of the time, not all of the time, but like you have for your use, okay? Jewelry that is worn, you don't have to pay zakah on that. You don't have to wear it on a daily basis. So all of this boils down to intention, okay? So if I have 5 cars, I have 7 cars, one I drive on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, one per day of the week, I use them, that's fine. Or there's a car that I have that I only, I take to the racetrack once a month, it's a Ferrari, whatever, that's fine. If I use it once a year, that's fine. I use it. I didn't buy it as an investment. If I bought it for my own use, I don't pay zakah on it. Now, when it comes to jewelry, there is some difference of opinion. And the Hanafi madhab says that you should pay zakah on gold that you have in jewelry. Now, even within the madhab, there is difference of opinion to be found. So I side with the opinion that you don't have to pay zakah on gold jewelry, because the evidence that's used for that seems to indicate that Imam Abu Hanifa considered gold to be something like money. He considered it to be like currency, because at the time it was used as currency. Okay, that's what it seems like. And zakat is only supposed to be on those things that are currency or that are growing, that you're buying for investment, that are extra. Okay, so if you're wearing jewelry, I would say, you could follow the opinion, the Hanafi opinion, that you should pay zakat on the gold jewelry, but I will say you don't have to pay that. Okay, so it's anything that you're using on a day-to-day basis. You don't have to pay zakat on that. I haven't heard that opinion. The zakah would be every year. So if you are following the opinion that you have to pay zakah on jewelry, you would have to pay it every year. Okay.
I think so. It should also.
Good. Yes. Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Which school says that you have to pay or you don't have to pay? Okay. So the question isn't jewelry like cars too? Men like cars, maybe women like jewelry. So if a man has 5 cars and he drives them from time to time and maybe uses one once a year, he still doesn't have to pay zakat on it, right? Same thing applies to jewelry. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because jewelry is just like the car. And so the Shafi'i, the question became, which madhab say that you have to and you don't have to pay zakat on jewelry? By the way, we're talking specifically about the gold. If it comes to diamond and platinum and other types of jewelry, then there's not a difference of opinion, okay? But specifically for gold, only the Hanafi madhab says that you pay zakat on that. The Shafi'i, the Maliki, and the Hanbali madhab say that you don't pay zakat on it. Yes. Yep.
So my understanding is if it's more than 7.5 million, you have to pay the zakat on all account, which is still sitting in the usually one set of wedding comes or you have it for your children.
Yeah, the Hanafi opinion would be that you pay zakat on all of, if as long as it's above nisab, yes, you pay zakat on all of that gold, right? And it doesn't matter whether it's for investment or wearing or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Okay. Yeah, so that's the argument I'm making. Is Imam Kasani talks about this in Bada' al-Sana, and he explains how Abu Hanifa looks at gold and how he considers it to be. There's a lot of research on this, and I can follow up later if you're interested in like knowing why I have the opinion I do. But I strongly believe that I go with the majority here, and the majority is that you don't pay zakat on gold unless that gold is for investment. And we'll get to that. We're just talking about the things that you don't pay zakat on. Okay. Was there another comment? Yeah.
Another interesting question. Like, for example, somebody follow one madhab when they pray.
Yeah.
And for zakat, they follow another madhab.
Yeah.
That works?
Okay. The question is, if somebody follows one madhab for praying, can they follow a different madhab for zakah? Right? Okay. So here's how I'll answer the question. There are some people who strictly adhere to a madhab. They're called madhabi, right? There are people who believe that life is more consistent or easier, or it's better, or it's mandatory to follow madhab. Some people believe that. For the people who believe that, then yes, if you pray using a particular madhab, then you give zakah according to the same madhab. Other people believe, no, I don't strictly follow a madhab, I follow my local sheikh, or I follow this particular sheikh, or I follow whatever. They follow something else. Okay. For those people, I would say go to your local sheikh. Right. Some people are opening up like books of Hanafi fiqh and they're doing all the Hanafi research. Other people are like, no, there's a sheikh I really like. I think he's pious. I think he's knowledgeable. I like what he says. It makes sense to me. I follow him. Then those people will follow that person. There's others who believe that you should go and seek opinions and compare all of the different opinions and ask scholars like which opinion seems stronger to you. They're called la madhabi. They don't follow madhab. Sometimes they're called salafis. Sometimes they're called ahlul hadith, right? So for those people, they tend not to follow a madhab, or they follow a different type of madhab. They might follow Sheikh Uthaymeen, Sheikh bin Baz. They might follow Ibn Taymiyyah, something else, right? So for those people, they don't have to abide by it. So it's whatever your philosophy is. This is not a madhab class. I'm not here to teach which philosophy is better. So if you follow madhab, it's easy. I told you Hanafis do this. Okay, great. This is what I do. Shafis do this. You do this, right? Yeah. Yeah.
For zakat, any other, part of Islam, they
Yep.
can follow any other madhab, they can change any time.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah. So can people change madhabs anytime? Yes, they can change madhabs anytime, right? And if you're following one for one, can you follow one for another? Yeah. I mean, if you've talked to a scholar and he's okay with that, no problem with that, or she's okay with that. Go ahead.
I have a question on the jewelry.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the one you wear, but if you don't wear all of them, do you pay on it or?
Yeah. So let's say you have jewelry, okay, and some of it I know that I have bought because I like to wear it. And some of it I know I've bought because I think the value will go up. I think it's a good investment. Okay? So the amount, the jewelry that you've bought for wearing, you would put in this bucket. It's not zakat eligible. But for the jewelry that you bought for investment, you would put that in the zakat eligible bucket. You have two buckets.
That could be sometimes, it's not investment.
Yep.
It's that I'm not wearing all these jewelry all the time.
Yep. So yeah. So what if you have both? What if like I bought something, I bought a comic book, or I bought a piece of jewelry or an art or collectible, and I don't know if it's for investment or if it's for wearing or using, or I don't know if it's for both. Maybe I have both intentions. I don't know what to do, right? So you have to make a decision which one's more. You have to do that. It just depends on intention. Yeah. Let's get to that in the next slide, inshallah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the jewelry is an asset. The way you understand any asset, when hardship comes, the first thing you So regardless, you want it for your wearing it, you like it or so, but then in hardship, you're selling it because it's a material, it's an asset.
Yep.
So asset has certain nisab and then it has zakah. You were saying it, you don't have to do that.
Cool. Let's get to it on the next slide because this is an important topic. You had a point to make?
That's okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that it depends on the intention.
Yes, it depends on the intention. We'll get to the intention point. Okay, but let's start with the basics. Things you're well. Yeah.
The jewelry is only gold or you include diamond, gems?
If it's diamonds and platinum and silver, if it's other things, right? Then and you're wearing it, then there's no difference of opinion. The difference of opinion is
If you have it and you follow the Hanafi,
yeah,
you have to pay.
you pay on the gold,
So you pay on diamond, gems also?
just gold,
Just gold.
just gold. Yep. Okay. So this is what's not zakatable. The question becomes, well, then what is zakatable, right? These are the things that I wear on a day-to-day basis, and I use on a day-to-day basis. What is zakatable is what is extra. Like I said, the word nisab means elevated, right? It's something that is more than what you have. So zakat is on things that you have that's extra. Okay, that's actually either money that you can invest or something that is invested, right? It's something that is invested. So what is that? Number one, any currency that you have. Dollars, pounds, rials, doesn't matter. Egyptian guineas, it really doesn't matter. Any money that you have, whether it's sitting at home, whether it's sitting in a bank account, whether it's in under your mattress, any money that you have. Gold that you have, that's not jewelry, that you've bought for investment purposes. I have gold bars or coins, or you have like the ticker symbol GLD, something like that. Silver, cryptocurrency. All of this you pay zakah on, okay? How about money that you've borrowed from someone? I've borrowed $1,000 from you. Do I pay zakah on that? No. It's money that I've borrowed. I don't pay zakah on that. How about you? You lent me the money. If you think you'll get the money back, you'll pay zakah on it. If you think you're not getting the money back, then it's khalas, like you don't pay zakah on that anymore because you don't think you're going to get it back.
So if you have, let's say, platinum or other metals for investment purposes, you pay.
Yes, yeah. Anything that's invested, right? So these are examples. We'll talk about that. The lender of the money pays zakah. Okay. The one who's borrowed the money does not pay zakah. Also, it's temporary. So the lender has temporarily given the money to someone else. Okay. Stocks, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, any kinds of funds, stock options, employee stock options, restricted stock units, employee stock purchase plans, anything like that, you pay zakah on. But you pay, like for example, if you have an employee stock purchase plan or restricted stock units or stock options, you pay on the amount that's vested. For those that have stock options, you know what I'm talking about. For those that don't have it, don't worry about it, right? So it's vested, which means you actually own it. You have control over it. It belongs to you. If it's not vested, then you don't pay zakah on that, okay?
You pay on the amount that's available for you, or what would be the final net amount if you withdraw them?
Can you repeat the question?
You mentioned 401k, for example, right? $100,000, you have 401k. If you withdraw them,
Oh, got it. Okay, let's talk about 401k. So the question becomes retirement accounts. So I put here retirement accounts like 401k, Roth 401k, IRA, Roth IRA, Simple, SEP, 403. There's a whole bunch of retirement accounts, right? All of them, as well as educational savings accounts. You have the Coverdell ESAs, the 529s, and then you have the healthcare savings account, the HDHP-based ones, and so on and so forth. What these accounts have common is they're some type of investment, okay? And what do you pay on? First of all, you pay on the vested portion. One question that comes up, I'll get to your question in a second. The first question comes up is, why am I paying on a 401k or an IRA? Because I can't withdraw the money, or some variation of that question. I don't have control of the money. Number one, you put the money in there. You volunteered to put the money in there, okay? Number two, You choose which investments to put it into. The account is in your name. It's an account that is under your name. You choose what to invest in. Number 3, you can pull the money out. You just have to pay a 10% penalty, right? From 401k, IRA, all of these. You can pull the money out. And some of them you can pull out without penalty, like Roth IRA after 5 years, you can pull the principal out. But on a 401k, on an IRA, you can pull the money out with a 10% penalty, okay? And that'll get to your question in a second. On top of that, not only can you pull the money out, you can actually take a loan against your own 401k, for example, or IRA. You can take loan against yourself. So you have access to the money without penalty, okay? Not only that, you can withdraw the money outright with no penalty if you have medical expenses, you have funeral and burial expenses, you have education expenses. Even if you're buying a house for the first time and you don't have the money, you can pull it out. No penalties. If this isn't your money, I don't know what is. It's your money. You have control over it. You have access to it. You can pull it out anytime with 10%. And with some reasons, you could pull it out with 0% penalty. Okay? So that's the reason that ultimately you have to pay zakah on these retirement accounts, because it is your money and you have access and control over it. Now, the question becomes, do you pay on the balance that's in the 401k and the IRA? Or do you pay after, like if you were to pull it out? If you were to pull it out, you might have to pay some taxes and you might have to pay a 10% penalty, right? That becomes the question. There are 2 opinions on this. One opinion says that you pay on the balance. The other opinion says that you pay on the amount that you would withdraw post the penalties. The opinion that I follow is that you pay on the full balance. Let me tell you why. How many people here have a retirement account, by the way? 401k, IRA, something like that. A bunch of people. Okay. Are you planning to pull money out of it? Anyone? There's no intention to pull money out of it. So that money is going to stay there. And then it's going to grow, right? You've invested it, right? It's in some stocks or mutual funds or ETFs or something. It's just growing. Is the full amount growing, or is the amount minus 10% growing? Full amount's growing. When you pull it out, will you get the full amount or will you get a penalty? Right? So, and when you pull it out, you'll pay taxes on it, but you don't even know what taxes. You may not pay taxes on it. Maybe you'll be in a bracket where there's no taxes. Maybe your kids will get it without any taxes. There is a way. So you don't even know if you're going to pay taxes on it. So I think it is a safer and more conservative opinion, because you're taking the full amount that grows every year and you're making money on the full amount. You're not making on 900. If you have $1,000 in a 401k, it's the $1,000 that's growing every year, not the 900. Pay on the $1,000.
So if you have 401k and it grow from 1 year to the year, okay?
Yeah.
So you only pay on the part of growth, not the whole thing.
You pay on the whole thing. You pay on the whole thing. Yeah, so zakah, like I said earlier, zakah is paid on all of your assets combined. Okay, so you're going to pay on, when you're paying zakah, what you're going to do is, let's say it's like 354 days past today. I got to $5,300 last year, 354 days passed. Today, I go and I add up all of my balances. How much currency do I have under my bed? How much in the bank account? How much Bitcoin do I have? What is my 401k balance? What is my IRA balance? All of this, I add all of this up and I pay zakah on that. Okay?
So practically speaking, on an investment for 100,000, you would take out whatever 2.5% plus whatever penalties or taxes you think you would pay.
Yeah. I would say if you have $100,000 in your 401k, you pay 2.5% of 100,000. There is an opinion that allows you to say, take the 10% out, take the taxes out, and then you can pay 2.5% of what's left after that. If you take into account penalties and taxes, yes, you'll be paying less zakah if you do that.
I'm saying take out plus that much so that you make sure you're paying on the 100,000.
To pay on 100,000, just look at the balance of your 401k, and if it says 100,000, just pay 2.5% of that. You're done. Penalties will only lower the balance, right? The penalty is you're saying I have 100,000 in the 401k. If I took it out today, if I withdrew that money, it would become 90,000. So I'll pay on 90,000 instead of 100,000. That's what that allowance, that concession allows you to do if you follow that opinion.
But you're saying you would rather not do
Yeah, I'm suggesting if you can, pay on 100,000. But there's an opinion if you, yeah. Oh, if you're using that investment money to pay for the zakah, if you're going to actually withdraw money to pay for the zakah, then yes, you're going to end up paying the penalty and all that. Yes, you have to take that into account. But hopefully, like, we need to get better at 401k planning. I want to teach like a 401k planning class, like where it's like, okay, put this much in your 401k, leave this much outside of your 401k, so you don't get into this weird situation where you don't have enough money outside of your 401k. Paying penalties to pay zakah just doesn't sound right. Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Yeah. The comment is this happens more to women than men because women sometimes work for a long period of time and then they stop working and then they don't have savings outside the 401k. When the 401k kept growing, they got into trouble. If it's vested, you pay zakah on it. Yes. Yeah. It's unvested, you don't pay zakah on it. Okay. Okay. Let's keep going with this. We'll get more questions. And then assets that you have for capital gains. Okay. So if you bought a house and you want to sell that house and you're trying to make a profit, I bought it for $1 million and I'm going to sell it for 1.1, right? I'm trying to make money. I flip houses for a living. I will pay the zakah on the value of the house. We already said you don't pay zakah on your own house, right? Because you're living in it. What if I have 2 houses? What if I live in 2 cities? I go back and forth. If I'm living in both houses and go back and forth, I don't pay zakah on either one of them. It's not a problem. How about for the rental houses? Okay, so the question becomes, how about a rental house? Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about rental houses in 1 second when we get to the next bullet point. Okay, so we're talking about here is real estate in general. These are investments. If I bought some art, because I think it looks nice on my wall, do I pay zakah on it? No. If I bought the art because I think it's going to go up in value, do I pay zakah on it? Yes. I bought some jewelry because I wear it. Do I pay zakah on it? I said, no. I bought some jewelry because I think it's going to go up in value. You pay zakah on it? Yes. So intention changes what you pay zakah on, what you don't. So Allah knows if you just went out and bought something and bought $1 million painting and put it up on the wall so that you don't have to pay zakah, Allah will know, right? I bought this painting because it looks nice. No, Allah knows if maybe you bought the painting because it's going to go up in value. That's what you think it is, okay? So if I buy a Rolex, Rolexes tend to go up in value. Again, if I buy it for wearing, same thing as a jewelry, I don't pay zakah on it. If I buy it because I think it's going to go up in value, then I pay zakah on it, okay? Business assets. What you don't pay zakah on is, let's just talk about what you pay zakah on. Well, you pay zakah on cash. So if you have a business that has a bank account, you pay zakah on that. You have accounts receivable, this is money that people owe you, you pay zakah on that. And inventory. So if, let's say I don't even run a business, but I bought this phone from Apple, and then, not Apple, I bought it from eBay or OfferUp or something, Craigslist, and I bought it for $800 because I think I can sell it for $1,000. And my only intention for buying it is to sell the phone, I pay zakah on it. Okay, because it's something that becomes my business. It's something I'm doing for investment purposes. If I make things, right? So let's say I make computers, okay? I buy keyboards, I buy screens, I buy connectors, wires, all of that. I pay zakah on that, okay? All of the little parts that I have, I will pay zakah on it. So if I bought the keyboard for $50, I will pay zakah on $50 value, okay? The computer itself, once I've made it, let's say it costs me $800 to make the computer, but I sell it for $1,000, okay? Because I've finished making a computer, I pay zakah on $1,000. But if it's just sitting there, all the little piece parts, keyboard, this, all of that stuff, I pay zakah on $800. So things that are not finished, I pay on the value of the individual items. The things that are finished, I pay zakah on the full value.
So are you saying that in factories, the raw material is better than life, and that has lot of value?
Yes, the raw materials in a factory has value, and you have to pay zakah on that. So you have leather coming in, you have yarn coming in, you have cloth coming in, whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. So raw materials, you pay zakah on. work in progress goods inventory you pay zakah on, and finished goods you pay zakah on. The difference is in the value. In the raw materials and the work in progress goods, you pay on the value of the individual materials. The finished goods, you pay zakah on the final product that you've made. Okay. For those that are in business, you know what I'm talking about. And you can look at your balance sheet and figure this out. You have to do this for accounting purposes. Anyway, what you don't pay zakah on in business is the machinery that you use, the things that you use to make things. So you have, I don't know, a label printing machine, you have a computer making machine, you have buildings, you have furniture, you have whatever kind of machine, right? Those things you don't pay zakah on. So real estate, when you buy a house and you're renting it out, it's sort of like that. You're using it to get rent from. Okay, it's like a machine. You use it, you rent it out, and you get rent coming in. So because it's like a machine, if you buy a property and your primary intention is you want to rent it out, you don't pay zakah on the property. You buy a house, you rent it out, you don't pay zakah on the house. What happens is you have rent coming in, that rent will add to your bank balance, and as your bank balance goes up, savings go up, you pay zakah on that. Okay? And then we said nobody was farming, nobody had hidden treasure, none of that stuff, no minerals, no oil.
Going back to that business, so let's say for the inventory, for the car dealership, right, they have cars sitting in the lot.
Yes.
Like on the value of the car.
Yes. How does this work for car dealership? There's two types of inventories that exist at a car dealership. Sometimes because there's different types of car dealerships. It's a very complicated topic, actually. But the way that car dealerships work is essentially there's two types. You can summarize it into, for Islamic purposes, two types of inventory. Inventory that belongs to the dealership and inventory that belongs to someone else, like the manufacturer. Okay. So if you are running a car dealership and you have inventory that's yours sitting on the lot or in the building, you will pay zakah on the value of those cars. If you are sitting on inventory that belongs to the manufacturer, then you would not pay on that. Okay. If you are in the car rental business, yes, interesting. That becomes like a house that you're renting out. So you don't pay on the value of the cars because your intention is not to buy cars and sell cars. You may buy cars and you may sell them, but your primary business is to rent cars out and make money on the rent. So you would not pay on the cars that you have in the car rental business. Yeah. What belongs to the bank? Yep. Yep. So if you have a car rental business where you yourself rent the car, this happens a lot nowadays, right? Like you have Airbnb businesses where you rent from a landlord and then you rent out to Airbnb, or you rent a car and then you rent a car from someone else and you rent it to someone else. These types of businesses are very common nowadays in the gig economy, or not the gig economy, right? So if you're renting the car from someone, anything that you're renting from someone, you don't pay zakah on, because it's not your asset. The one who owns it, they have to pay zakah on it. You are renting it, you don't pay zakah on it. Yep. Yeah, the hardest part is always the mixed use. So let's say I have 10 cars that I'm buying and selling, and I have another 20 cars that I'm renting out. Well, that's easy because these ones I pay zakah on, and the ones that I'm renting I don't pay zakah on. But let's say I'm like, you know what? I'm in the car rental business. I rent cars, but I also make money when I sell cars. You have to go with the primary intention. If your primary intention is to rent, then you're not going to pay zakah on that. If your primary intention is to sell cars and make profit on that, you will pay zakah on that. So if I buy a piece of land and I buy it because I think I will build a house on it someday, I don't pay zakah on it because I think I will build a house on it. Now, suddenly I decide I've owned this land for 10 years. Then I say, you know what? I bought this land in the middle of nowhere and, some farmland. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm not going to live in a farm. I'm going to live in the city. So I want to sell this house now, right? Sell this land. So now that I decide I want to sell it, from now on, I'm going to start paying zakah on that, right? So I make this intention and then zakah becomes due. I will have to pay zakah on that land, even if I haven't sold it. As soon as my intention changed, I have to start paying zakah on that.
I don't know how much you have left, but let's say Mr. Bezos becomes Muslim tomorrow.
He becomes Muslim tomorrow? Yeah.
What of his Amazon website would
Okay. So the hypothetical question is, Jeff Bezos becomes Muslim tomorrow. What amount of zakah is he going to owe? So first of all, yeah. So first of all, if he becomes Muslim tomorrow, it won't be 354 days. So he'll owe 0 zakah. Okay. So he gets off easy. If you're a new Muslim, or let's say you were raised in a household where they weren't practicing Muslims. So let's say you were raised in a house, you didn't know about zakah. Like all your life, no one told you, you just really didn't know. Like, okay, you don't have to pay zakah. You're almost like a new Muslim, right? You just found out first time in your life, you've never heard of zakah. And now you come to a seminar on a Saturday and all of a sudden you find out there's this thing called zakah. You don't pay zakah on that. If you grew up poor, zakah was you were never obligatory on you. Yeah. Yeah. So, but if you knew you had to pay zakah, you have to go back and pay zakah for that. So what happens to Jeff Bezos? He becomes Muslim tomorrow. Tomorrow he pays nothing. 354 days pass. Okay. So we get to the 9th of Ramadan next year, right? Or whatever the date is. And then we go, Jeff Bezos, what is due on him? Well, obviously he's going to pay on, all of his investments and so on. What portion of Amazon does he pay zakah on? Amazon has a balance sheet. Amazon has an income statement. Amazon makes money 2 ways. Amazon sells their own products, and Amazon also has like a marketplace called Amazon Marketplace where they sell other people's products. So if other people are selling products, let's say they have shoes and clothes and books and whatever they have, other people are selling the products, Amazon's not going to pay zakah on that. Amazon looks at what's in their bank account. Amazon looks at what inventory they have and what is in their accounts receivable. They add all of that up. What is the stuff that Amazon owns? And Amazon pays zakah on that. So if Jeff Bezos, I don't remember what percentage of Amazon he has, let's say he owns, 20% of Amazon, then he's going to pay on 20% of Amazon's bank accounts, Amazon's inventory, and Amazon's accounts receivable. That's what he's going to pay it on. Okay. And so if we own Amazon account, a stock, and we treat it like a business, we would treat it in a similar fashion as well. Okay. So that is what is Zakatable. Any questions on what's Zakatable? Because now we're going to change topics. Yeah.
Regarding the rental house, I'm not clear. So somebody's buying the house for the investment, real estate, and he's renting it out.
Yep. Someone bought a house primarily for investment. They think the value is going to go up over time, but they happen to be renting it out because why wouldn't you rent it while you're waiting for the prices to go up? They're going to end up paying 2.5% on the entire price of the house. Okay, because their primary incentive was to buy the house to flip it. Whether it's flipping it same day, 1 week, 2 weeks, 5 years, 20 years, 100 years, it doesn't matter. You bought the house because you think it's going to go up in value. That's your primary intention. You pay zakah on it. Even if you rent it out, because you go by primary intention. What's your 50% plus intention? That's what you have to go with. You have to everything that you pay zakah on, you look at the current price. So that was one of the questions is, which value do you pay price on? Do you pay zakah on? You take all of these things, the current bank balance, the current value of the house, the current balance of the 401k, the current value of the gold bars that you bought for investment, the current value of all of these things, with the exception of the last one, because we're not doing agriculture and all that. You add up all of those values, and that is what you pay zakah on, 2.5% of that. Yep.
And they will rent the house. So next year they have to pay, like say the house is like 550, right?
Yep.
They have to pay the zakah of 550, even though they
Correct.
paid off the house.
Yes. Yeah. So what happens is you buy a house. The example was you buy a house for $500,000 this year. Not in California. I don't think you can. So anyway, $500,000 you buy a house this year, and then next year the value is $550,000. What do you pay zakah on? You pay zakah 2.5% of $550,000. You were buying it for investment. Even though you rented it out, your primary intention was investment, you pay on 2.5% of the total price of the house at that time. So you have to make sure that you have enough cash to be able to pay zakah. Yes. Ideally, when we are, you know how some of us are better at this than others. Let me just say it this way. When we plan our day, right? We go, hey, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to eat breakfast, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Then you say, you know what? I'm going to pray Dhuhr at the masjid, then I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to pray Asr at the masjid. Oh, I won't be close to my home masjid. I'll go to this other masjid, then I'll do this, right? So we plan our lives around prayer, right? This is the ideal way to schedule. We should plan our money around zakat as well. So we should say, look, I'm putting this much in the 401k. I don't want to pull out and pay penalty. Let me leave enough outside to pay zakah. I'm buying a house for this much for investment purposes. Let me make sure I have enough money to pay zakah. Now, what happens if we didn't plan, or if we planned poorly, or our plan just went wrong? Sometimes the house price, like, we bought a house for investment. I bought it for $500,000. I thought it would go to 600 next year, but you know what? It went to $1 million. Oh my God, I don't have enough cash to pay zakah. What do I do, right? So what I can do is I can just, if I don't have the bank balance, what I could do is I could write down and say, okay, house price was $1 million. I owe zakah on $1 million, right? $25,000 is what I owe in zakah. I only have $10,000 in the bank account. I'll pay that now. And the other $15,000 I'll pay when I get the money. So it's not ideal to do that. Like you resort to that because you didn't plan or the plan went wrong, something like that. But generally, you should keep enough money to pay the zakah. But if you don't have the money, you can pay it later. So let's say you don't have the money for 10 years, right? The house is $1 million. It's still $1 million, still $1 million, still $1 million. So you have 25,000 from the first year, 25,000 from the second year, 25,000 from the third year. Over 10 years, at the end of the 10 years, when you sell the house, you pay $250,000 in zakah. Okay? No, you don't pay on the capital gains only. Zakah is due on the entire asset. There's no difference of opinion on that. Yeah. 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 So let's say, yeah. Yeah. The question becomes, I bought a house in Texas because I couldn't afford one in California. Texas house prices have gone up like 50% in the last 2 years. They've gone up like almost 100% in the last 4 years, I think. So if you want to buy a house in Texas, good luck. Oh my God, it's so expensive. So, house will go on sale in Austin for $400,000 and sell 2 days later for $500,000. So, and a nice house in Austin is going to cost you $1 million. In Dallas too. You want a house next to the masjid? $850,000, $900,000. Anyway, the question was, what happens? Because you think you can afford a house in Texas and you can't afford one in California, right? So you buy a house in Dallas. You're like, yeah, I want to live in California. I don't want to live in that hot place. I want to live in California. The weather's nicer here, but I can't afford a house over here. So I buy a house in, Waco, Texas, because I can't afford Dallas, Texas. So I buy one in Waco. And I buy it for $400,000, whatever I buy it for. But I think I'm going to live there someday. I didn't buy it for investment. I bought it because, you know what? Someday I'm going to realize, I know that someday, I want to live close to the masjid. I want to be whatever. I bought this house because I want to live in it. Let's just leave it there. Okay? I didn't buy it as an investment. I bought it for myself. It's $400,000. Next year, it's $500,000. It's $600,000. 5 years later, it's $1 million. Right? What zakah do I pay next year? What do I pay 5 years from now? What do I pay 10 years from now? If you bought it for yourself, right? You bought it to live in. You don't pay any zakah this year, next year, 5 years, 10 years. Okay, you don't pay any zakah. Now, 10 years from now, you realize it was a nice idea to live in Texas, but it really is just too hot. It's too hot. The food is better. There's, other advantages. Cost of living is low. But you know what? I love IIOC. I want to be in this area. I love the California weather. So I'm not moving to Texas. I'm going to sell the house, or I'm going to keep it as an investment. The moment you make that decision of keeping it an investment, now it becomes zakatable. Okay? So from that point on, you don't come back to the last 10 years and say you pay zakah on that. No. That, your intention was different. Now, moving forward, from that point on, you start paying zakah on it. Okay? Vice versa as well. So you bought a house for an investment, you had it for 10 years, you paid zakat on it for 10 years, and then after 10 years, you said, it's a really nice house, I'm just going to move in there. You move in and you stop paying zakah on it. Or you keep it for a living. Yeah, we'll get to it in a future slide. Yeah.
So somebody buys a house for $500,000, right? But then he says, "Oh, I have bank
Ah,
So do I pay, you know?
okay. We'll get to that in the next slide. Okay. So what can you subtract for zakah? I bought a house for $1 million, right? But then I bought it on an Islamic mortgage. It's really a silly term, Islamic mortgage. I don't like that term. But let's say I used some sort of Islamically compliant, Sharia compliant financing. I went to Amin Housing Cooperative or something like that, and I got a loan from them. I owe $800,000 on the house. I owe $800,000. I don't even have $800,000 in the bank. I add up all of my assets, it doesn't add to $800,000. So I'm not Zakah eligible? How does that work? Okay. So the question, the answer is, once you calculate the assets, I have this much in the bank account, this much in the 401k, this much is, there's some things that you get to subtract. What are those things that you get to subtract? What you get to subtract is things that have now become due. Like, let's say rent. I don't subtract rent for the next 3 months or the next year or the next 5 years. I look at what rent has become due. So let's say it's the first of the month. Rent is due for 1 month. I can subtract that because now the bill has come. It's due, right? My contract says it's due on the first of the month. And let's say my Zakat date is on the 4th or something like that. But I don't have to pay until the 10th. Because the due date came, I can subtract the rent for that month. If I pay rent 3 months at a time, 3 months in advance, then I can subtract 3 months worth of rent because it became due. Utility bills. I got the bill. It's due in the due date says 2 weeks, but I got the bill. Now it's due. I can subtract that. Credit card bills, same thing. Taxes, when they're due. If a tax becomes due, I can subtract that. Mortgage payments. The payment that became due. The very specific payment that became due. So if it's $3,000 for this month, I can subtract the $3,000. That's it. Long-term debts that I have, I don't get to subtract those. If I have a mortgage on a car, I have a mortgage on a house, I have a mortgage on something else, I don't get to subtract that. I don't get to say I have a $100,000 house, but I only own 20%, and I have an $800,000 due on it, and my bank balance is $500,000, so I have no zakah. No. You're going to pay zakah on the $500,000, right? So only the payment that becomes due, the current debt, that is what you get to subtract. Same with student loans. Same with wages. For that month. Or for that due period, whatever that is. Okay? So that's what you can subtract. So, in summary, add up all of your assets, right? Everything that you have. I have my house, I have my car, I have my jewelry, I have whatever. Subtract those things that are not zakatable, the things that I use. Those things that I use, I subtract those out. Subtract the things that have become due. Then take a look. What did this add up to? Is this greater than $5,300 or less than $5,300? If it's less than $5,300, I don't even pay zakah. If it's greater than $5,300, then I pay zakah on the entire amount, all of the balances combined. Once again, not just the gains part, not just what I saved this year, not the income, none of that. All of the balance of all of this combined. So I take all of this, multiply that by 2.5%, and I get my zakah calculation. So the next topic is going to be who we pay zakah to. Before we get to who we pay zakah to, let's ask any questions we have on what we pay zakah on. We'll get to that, inshallah. Yeah.
Going back to stocks and cryptocurrency, is there a Islam on that, or used to calculate it as $1,500?
The same. Yeah, the zakah on the nisab for all of this is going to be the same amount. Yeah.
Do we pay zakat on the employment plan? It's called ESPP.
Yes, employee stock purchase plan. Employee stock purchase plan is usually when the company allows you to buy some of their stock at a discount. Once you buy it at a discount, you end up owning those shares. And so once you own those shares, they become part of your zakatable assets. So ESPP, yes, you would pay zakah on that balance as well.
Only you cash it out, or
Whether you cash it out or you don't cash it out, you pay zakah on it. RSUs, ESPP, and employee stock options. Anything that's vested, you will pay zakah on.
today you receive like 500 shares of that. So do you pay?
Yeah. So your zakat, so you got to $5,300 353 days ago. Tomorrow you were supposed to pay zakah. Okay. And you had 10,000 in the bank account. And now all of a sudden you get a bunch of shares or a gift or something. Yes, you pay zakat on all of that. Yeah. So tomorrow, because it'll be in my bank, I have to pay zakat on it. Yeah.
You get a 401k and you withdraw a certain amount, okay, and your balance stays the same amount because even though you withdraw, it still stays the same amount.
Yeah.
So do you deduct that the balance you withdraw?
Yeah. So the question becomes, you have a 401k and you withdraw a certain amount from the 401k, but the balance stayed the same because 401k is growing over time. So you had 110,000, you withdrew 10,000, but let's say you had 100,000, you withdrew 10,000, and then a little while later it was 100,000 again because it grew. What do you pay zakat on? Just the easiest thing to do is take up everything. Like tomorrow, let's say tomorrow's zakat is due. You take all of your bank balances, all of your 401k, all of these things, add it all up. Add up all of that, and that's what you pay zakat on. So if you, let's say I took out $10,000 and I gave it away, it's gone. I don't pay zakat on that. I took it out today, I gave it away, it's gone. But I took it out today, I moved it to my bank, well, I still have it. So I have the 401k and the bank, I will pay zakat on all of that combined.
This market is constantly fluctuating last year.
Yeah. Okay, so this market fluctuates a lot. What do you do because the market's going up, the market's going down, the market's going up, it's going down? What do you pay zakah on? What you look at is the market value of your assets on the day that the zakah is due. Okay, so it doesn't matter that the stock market went up like this or it went down like that. The day that the zakah becomes due, you look at the value of that day. It doesn't matter that crypto market did this, up, down, whatever. You look at it on the day. What if it's something that you don't have a market value for? You have a house in the middle of nowhere and you don't even know what it's worth. Or you're working for a company that's pre-IPO. They say they're worth $5 billion, but you can't sell the stock, right? You have no idea if the company is actually worth that much. What do? You can either try and take the best estimate and say, this is what I think the value is and pay zakat on that. Or you can say, you know what? I don't even think this company is worth, they say it's 5 billion. I don't know. You can wait until the company, their stock becomes tradable, until they IPO, until you actually find out the value. And then you can come back and back pay the zakat that was due. So, yeah. Yeah. How many years can you delay zakah? So you really should not be delaying zakah, right? Like, yes, you really should not be delaying zakah. So if you have a certain bank balance and a zakah is due, pay it right away because delaying zakah is a sin. So you don't want to delay zakah. But let's say you either didn't know it was a sin, or you made a mistake, or you did something wrong. Whatever the reason was, now you have to go and back pay. So I know I had, let's say, shares of Tesla, and they were worth $100 last year, and right now they're worth $200. And I didn't pay zakah last year because I didn't know I was supposed to pay zakah on my Tesla shares. I just found out. So it's worth 200 now, and it's worth 100 then. So what I do is I pay 2.5% of 100 for last year and 2.5% of 200 for this year. So when you back pay zakah, for whatever reason, you pay on the value it was then. You don't look at the value now, you look at the value then. Okay. Other questions?
The currency devalue.
If the currency devalues?
Yeah, for example, you didn't pay 10 years ago the zakah.
Yeah, so currency does devalue over time. I think it can get very, very tricky if you're living in, like, I don't know, Turkey or Greece, or you've gone through some crazy inflation, then that can be problematic. But unless you're living in, double-digit inflation areas, it's okay to ignore inflation, generally speaking. Generally speaking, just ignore inflation because it goes both ways. The currency value can go up, currency value can go down, asset value can go up, asset value can go down. It gets very, very tricky. So it's easier just to ignore that. Okay. Any other questions before we get to distribution of zakah? Okay, so who is eligible to receive zakah? Can I use zakah money for the masjid? No. Can I use it for building a school? No. Depends. What does it depend on? If it's in a poor area, okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, so who we give zakat to, we learn from the verse in Surah At-Tawbah. And the verse says, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل. So indeed, zakah is for the poor, the needy, those who are employed to collect it, those whose hearts are inclined, freeing slaves, those in debt, or Allah's cause, and for stranded travelers. And then it says, فَرِيضَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ, it's an obligation from Allah, and Wallahu alimun hakim, Allah is the all-knowing, all-wise. Okay, let's go through each of these categories one by one. لِلْفُقَرَاء, zakah can be given to someone who is a faqir. A faqir is someone, there's a lot of opinions on this, I'll give you one. A faqir is someone who basically is below the nisab. When you add up their wealth, see how like nisab, if you have nisab, you have to pay zakah. If you have less than nisab, then you can receive zakah. Okay? So even if it's someone who's healthy, they're working, they're able-bodied, they're able to earn a living, but they just don't have that much wealth, you can give them zakah. Okay. Then you have masakin. Who is someone that's miskin? Miskin is someone who has nothing. They have absolutely nothing at all. And by the way, these are the two most important categories of zakah, the fuqara and the masakin. There's two opinions on this. Actually, there's multiple opinions on this. One opinion says the faqir is the one who has something and the miskin is the one who has nothing. Okay? The other opinion is faqir is the one who has nothing and the miskin is the one who has something. Okay? And there's many other opinions that I don't want to get into. But there's at least two opinions. So between the faqir and the miskin, what difference does it make? Basically, they're poor people. Okay? These are people who don't have a lot of money. They're the needy and the poor. Okay? It's simple enough. Okay, so you want to give it to the people who are the most needy, right? So you want to find people who are the most in need. So if you have someone who's more poor, then you're going to give it to them, right? But yeah, if someone falls below the nisab, then yes, they would be eligible. Yeah, he has a car, right? But he doesn't have the wealth. So you're trying to distribute that. Okay. Then we have وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا. These are the people appointed by the government to collect zakah. These are not the people who, it's a little bit controversial here, but these are the people that are employed by the Islamic State, okay? And that's my opinion. These are the people employed by the Islamic State. We don't have an Islamic State now. Therefore, if you're giving your money to Islamic Relief and saying they are the عَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا, so I can give them some money, I would say, no, they're not عَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا. There's a very specific definition of this. So these are people collecting and giving zakah. Because what happens is if I say, hey, you know what? Let me give my money to Sabiha, who's going to give it to her husband. But, Sabiha helped me distribute zakah so she could take 2%. And then her husband Hassan's going to take 2% because, he helped distribute. And he's going to give it to Garden Grove Masjid. And Garden Grove is going to take 5% because administrative fees. And then it's going to go to Pakistan because, that's where they decided to send it. And there's an organization over there. They're going to take 10%. You can see how this becomes very problematic. So this is why you want to be careful with, why I take a very strict stance on عَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا, that these are people appointed by the government, by the Islamic State, because it's a very specific group that collects the zakah and immediately distributes it. And it's usually a small percentage that's allocated for them. And then وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ, this is basically new Muslims who are weak in faith, or non-Muslims who you're trying to, their hearts are inclining towards Islam, or they have some ill intent and corruption that they have planned for against Muslims, and by giving them money, you can maybe influence them not to do that. Okay, so there's a variety of different categories. This is not a category that you should make a decision on your own. Go ask a sheikh, go ask a scholar to make sure that if you're giving in this category, that it would be eligible for this category. Okay. وَفِي الرِّقَابِ is, we don't have this issue anymore, so I guess it doesn't apply, but raqaba literally means neck, but it's used to refer to a slave. Okay. A slave who has negotiated with their master that they can earn their freedom for a certain price. They're called mukatab. In Islamic fiqh, they're called mukatab. They've negotiated a price which will buy them their freedom. And so you can give them money so that they can buy their freedom. So this usually, in today's world, you're not going to find slaves, so it doesn't apply. Then we have gharimin. These are people who have money. They have money, but somehow they got into a lot of debt. And not like illegal debt, not like gambling debt or something like that, but they got into debt. They got into a bad situation, and now the amount of debt that they have, when you add it up, they actually start falling below nisab. It happens when people's businesses go bad during a down economy. For some reason, right, they ended up in a poor situation. They actually become eligible for zakah. You can pay off people, you can help people pay off. They got into a bad situation due to whatever, student loan, something like that, right? They're in this debt situation. So you help pay them off. They had a bad investment, something like this happens. And then we have this category called fi sabilillah. And the difficult category. Because, you know, Imam Malik said, the paths of Allah are many. Okay? Many ways to say fi sabilillah. But I do not know of any difference that was intended here, other than this is referring to jihad. This is referring to fighting in the way of Allah. So, let's just say many of the scholars hold the opinion that this category is specifically referring to fighting in the way of Allah, to supporting those armies and so on and so forth. Because if it wasn't, you can say anything is fi sabilillah. I'm doing this fi sabilillah. I'm doing that fi sabilillah. So this verse would become kind of silly. Right? You say like, why is Allah saying لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهِ? Why is he saying all of these things? And he says fi sabilillah, which just means anything. He doesn't have to spell it out. So fi sabilillah, many scholars hold the opinion, means specifically in the path of fighting for Allah. Okay? And then you have wabni sabil, which is a traveler, someone who was, maybe he's wealthy, maybe she's wealthy, but she went to a foreign land and she lost all her money, or it was stolen, or she got stuck without the money. So even though she usually has money in her land, she was in this other place stranded where she lost all her money somehow. Now she needs to get back to the land, so she needs money to get back. So that would be a traveler who is stranded and fall under wabni sabil. These are the people that are eligible for zakah. Who's not eligible for zakah? Someone who has nisab would not be eligible for zakah. Someone who's non-Muslim would not be eligible for zakah, except if they were in category number 4. And even category 4, there's a difference of opinion. Okay, so some people say, the Hanafis and the Malikis would say they have to be Muslim anyway. Generally, zakah is for Muslims. You cannot give zakah to someone who is giving you benefit. So you say, hey, you know what? Come work for me and mow my lawn, and I will give you some zakah in return. No, it's not zakah. That's a wage. That doesn't make sense. Also, for that reason, you cannot give zakah to your children. Why not? You're responsible for giving your children and taking care of money and taking care of them anyway, right? You're responsible for providing your children food and clothing and necessities and everything else. So if you're giving your children zakah, you're helping yourself, because you're basically like, yeah, let me give my money to them, and you're supposed to give them money anyway. So that's not where the zakah is supposed to go. And for the same reason, you can't give zakah from a husband to a wife. For the same reason, you cannot give zakah to your parents, because taking care of your parents is also an obligation upon you, that you take care of them. And for the same reason, your grandparents and so on and so forth. Okay? How far do the relatives go? So children and parents, up and down, right? Spouse, everyone agrees that you cannot give zakat to your wife. The question becomes, can the wife give zakat to the husband? How many people say yes? A lot of yeses. How many people say no? No? We have one no? Okay. So the majority of the scholars have said that you can give zakat to your husband, the Hanafis have said you cannot give zakat to your husband. Why? Because you're still kind of helping yourself. You give zakat to your husband, right? And then your husband spends it on you. You see the logic? That's kind of that can be problematic, right? You give zakat to your husband, and then your husband spends the money on you. So I think there's a case to be made there that can be a little bit problematic if a wife gives zakat to the husband. Now, can you give zakat to your brothers and sisters? Yes. Can you give zakat to your cousins? Yes. Uncles, khalas, ammus? Yes. Chacha, taya, khala, khalu? Yes. All of the mamu, mami, all the uncles, all the aunts, you can give them zakat. Okay. You can give zakat to your in-laws. You can give zakat to your nephews, your nieces. Like pretty much, it's very wide open.
On the number 6, getting someone to get off them of their debt, right?
Yeah.
So let's say if there's something like the amount is like quite potential, like
Yeah.
quite a bit. So can you say, okay, this is much I owe for this year, and I add something more, which I'm gonna be like do for next year for mine, and get them out of the debt.
Okay. We'll talk about paying zakat early. It'll fall under that category. Yeah.
So say somebody's eligible for zakat, does it matter how they spend that zakat? You know that they don't spend it.
Okay. Does it matter how they spend the money? So what's important is when you give zakat to someone, that money has to be given to them and in their control. You can't say, I'm going to build a school for you in this community. I know all the people in this community are poor, and I am deciding I'm going to build you a school. That is not how you pay zakat. Zakat you give to the recipient. You let them decide. But let's say the entire community decides, hey, you know what? We'll take the zakat and we want a school. Fine, then you can build a school. But the zakat has to be given to the person and they decide what to do with the zakat. Now, if you know someone's a lazy bum and you know that if you gave them, let's say, $10,000 in zakat, that they're going to end up, they're wasteful or they're silly, they don't know how to budget, they're not going to manage the money well, what you could do is you can give them zakat in installments. Because they have rent due at the beginning of the month. So you can say, you know what, I'll give you $1,000 now. Next month, you give them another 1,000. Next month, so you can pay zakat in installments because you know that they're not going to be wise with that. If they're into haram things, you should not be giving them. Like what you can do also is zakat, you can give them also in, it doesn't have to be cash. You can give them something that they need, like you give them something else of value, right? You give them maybe food or you can pay their rent or something like that. But you really should be giving them the money and they should be using the money. But don't give zakat to people who are lazy and they're able to work and they're going to spend it on haram and your zakat is just going to be wasted. Don't do that. Give it to people who are eligible, who will put that money to good use. Yeah.
You said that, let's say, I'm going to build a school for these people, right?
Yep.
If there is a school that is taking poor people, taking care of poor people, okay?
Yep.
Can I give the money to the school?
Yeah. So the question becomes: there's a school, and you know that the students of that school are all like zakat eligible, or a subset of the students in that school are zakat eligible, and the school takes care of making sure those are the only students that get the zakat money. There's a
Or just let's say like
yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Some say this,
There's a
taking zakat eligible, but some are not.
Yep.
But the school is taking the money from me as
Yep.
zakat and feeding everybody.
Okay. The school has students that are zakat eligible and students that are not zakat eligible, and the school is taking your money and it's giving it to everybody. It's taking care of everybody. No, that would be problematic. The problem there is zakat can only go to those who are zakat eligible.
So let's say I gave $500 to the school, 50% or 30% of the
Yeah, some percentage of that is going to non-zakat eligible. Then that percentage was not zakah.
530% is zakat eligible, so 530%
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
zakat.
So 30% of your donation, because 30% were zakat eligible, 30% counted as zakah. The other 70% counted as sadaqah.
That's very difficult to calculate.
Yeah, that's why if you're going to give zakah, give it to an organization who manages it well, because you don't want to sit there and be doing the math.
It's not only important to know the calculation of my part of the zakat, it's also important to find out who is eligible and will make.
Yes, it's important to understand if you're giving your zakat to an agent or an organization to understand how careful they are with zakat and how they calculate it and how careful they are. Which, by the way, I will endorse IIOC. IIOC collects zakat money, not for the masjid, into a zakat fund. Okay, that's specific, separated out, completely separate for zakat. And that money is used to reputable, it's given to either directly, or a good chunk of it is also given directly to reputable organizations that are very careful about zakah. So IIOC is very, very careful about this to make sure that the money goes to zakah eligible recipients.
A number of other organizations, they also ask.
Yeah.
They say that if you
Yeah.
want zakat money, then you should
Yeah,
pay it on your check.
when you give zakat to an organization, organizations will usually tell you, please indicate this is for zakah, so they could put it in a different bucket. They put it in a different bank account, in a different budget, and it goes to a different set of people. So make sure you mark your check with zakah or your credit card, whatever it is, and then make sure that that particular organization is very, very careful with giving zakah.
So if the organization is taking any administrative fee,
Yeah.
you can mention upfront, or you just
If the organization takes administrative fees, then you should really try and look into that. Some organizations are very bad about being transparent. Some organizations are charging 30-40% fees and you don't know. So try and get to know. You know how when we invest money, right? We say, hey, I'm going to put my money in this stock or this business. What do? You go and do your due diligence. You look at the balance sheet. You look at their track record. You look at the management. If it's a stock, you might look at ROA, ROE. You look at all of these different factors, right? When we give zakah, we should treat it the same way. It's like an investment. It's an investment on akhirah, right? So it's a portfolio. We need to go do that due diligence. Is this organization handling my zakah properly? Are they trustworthy? Can I trust these people? Is the zakah going to make it to the end recipient? Do some work. Not that you're 100% liable, but the same way, we tend to do when we go and select a lawyer. You make sure that lawyer is going to win the case for you in court, right? You don't just go pick a random lawyer. You go say, hey, how many cases have you won? Let me talk to some of your clients as references. That's how we pick an accountant. I want to make sure, just talking to someone who said they have a $120,000 tax fine because their accountant wasn't doing their taxes right. And it's being looked at as fraud, right? So you pick an accountant carefully, you pick a doctor carefully, you pick a lawyer carefully. You make sure that when you pick an investment carefully. So when you give zakah, you pick the organization carefully. Do a little bit of due diligence, make sure they're doing good work. You don't have to go and look over their shoulder at everything they're doing, but do a little bit of due diligence.
And some organizations very clearly say that we don't charge any administrative fee on this.
Yeah, some organizations don't charge any administrative fee, which is great. Go ahead, Sabia.
So do I have the Islamic school? Pretend IIOC has an Islamic school, and they use a portion of this zakat for kids who want to attend but can't afford it. Is that okay? Given that public school is available if kids wanted it, but they want the Islamic education, the environment, the upbringing to be in Islamic school.
Good question. Okay, so someone goes to an Islamic school and part of their tuition is funded for by the school's zakat funds. Would that be okay, given that they don't have to go to Islamic school? They could go to a free public school. As long as the person meets the qualifications for falling below the nisab, something like that is very reasonable. Because it's not an unreasonable ask to say, I want my kids to go to Islamic school. If you're collecting money because you want your kids to go to a private school that costs $40,000 a year, no, zakah shouldn't be used for that. But if it's something reasonable that you would expect, people of that socioeconomic status, this would be normal for them to do, then yeah. We're not trying to keep people poor, right? We want them to be good Muslims, to have access to these things. So who gets priority though? Number one, family. So you have family, give priority to family, people who are zakat eligible within your family. And then your local area. Because everybody wants to send their zakat to Palestine, right? Is Palestine ever going to send their zakat to California? It's never going to happen, right? No one in the world is going to send their zakat to California. So we are responsible for sending, number one, taking care of our local people in California before we send our money abroad. And in fact, many of the scholars say, if there's a need locally, you absolutely cannot send your money abroad. It's wajib for you to spend it locally. Others say it's mustahab, that it's recommended or highly recommended that you spend the money locally. So we should start by taking care of our local Zakah obligations before we send them abroad. Your family is abroad, you take care of your family abroad. Because it's basically closeness, right? So your family is close to you in relationship, so you give to them. And then you have people who are your society, your community, your neighborhood, your neighbor. They have a right over you more than others might across the world, right? So your family has a right over you, your neighbors have a right over you. And that's why these two categories come first.
What about like the homeless shelter? Obviously, non-Muslims and Muslims go there, so is that-
A homeless shelter where Muslims and non-Muslims go, you're back to the school question, right? If 1 out of 100 Muslim, if 1 out of 100 homeless people is Muslims, then 1% of their expenses are zakah eligible.
But they're not gonna,
They're not going to tell you.
They're not gonna tell you.
They're not going to tell you. So usually you would use sadaqah for that, right? Remember, zakah is just the minimum amount we have to pay. Then you can give whatever sadaqah you want to give. A few miscellaneous issues. Let's get through this because it's going to answer some questions. And then we'll come to more questions. I think this is the last slide. Number 1, intention. When you give the money to someone as zakah, you have to have the intention of zakah. Okay? But what if I gave someone $500 last month, right? And I didn't give it with the intention of zakah, but they're zakah eligible. So now I want to be like, okay, that $500, now I'll think about it as zakah. Can I do that? No, I can't. I already paid it as not zakah. It's gone. Okay? So now I have to give more zakah. Okay? So the intention has to be there. Do I have to tell the person I'm giving zakah that this is zakah? No, I don't. Because the person might, person might be offended. Hey, I'm giving you my zakah money. If they're not offended, it's not a problem. But if they're going to be offended, no need to tell them. You have to make sure they're zakah eligible, right? But you don't have to say, hey, this is zakah money. Make sure you use it wisely or something. No, that's just offensive. We don't do that to people.
How about somebody borrow money from you? Your intention to give him as zakah, but he's thinking that he can give it back. He says, forget about it, I don't want it back.
Yeah, if somebody has borrowed money from you, and then you're like, in your head, you're like, I'm just going to give it as zakah, and if they give it back, I'm like, yeah, that becomes zakah. That's fine.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, just tell them don't worry about it. You don't have to tell them it's zakah, right? As long as they're eligible, they have to be below nisab, right? They have to be zakah eligible. Okay. We already talked about the fact that the zakah recipient must get control of the money. They must own the money. You don't decide for them. We said you can pay zakah in increments. So if someone's going to, you think they can't be trusted with the money, but if you give them a little bit at a time, that's fine. Then you can give them zakah in increments. Okay. Backdating zakah. We talked about that. So if you have to pay zakah for last year, you would look at the value of the asset for last year. Okay. Paying zakah in advance. Can you pay zakah in advance? Yes. In fact, it's good to pay zakah. Like, let's say I know I paid zakah yesterday. Now my next zakah is going to be due a year from now, right? I don't have to wait the full year. I can start paying now. Start paying zakah early. So I can pay, a little bit now, a little bit next month, a little bit month after. I can keep paying zakah in advance. It's not an issue. And I think we also talked about this, making up for past zakah. And however, if you just became Muslim or you just kind of came back to Islam, something like that, you don't have to make up for the zakah before that. What if you paid zakah to someone and you thought they were eligible for zakah, but now you find out they're not eligible for zakah? What do you do? As long as you did some due diligence, it's like, hey, I did the diligence, and this person seems like they're eligible for zakah, and then you later find out they're not. You're like, okay, that's fine. Alhamdulillah, Allah will forgive that. But if you're just careless and you just gave people zakah without thinking about it, then yes, you do have to pay it again. Okay, so it depends on the level of due diligence that you did. Other questions that we have, because this is, I think.
So what if the person say that that they need money, in a very legitimate transaction, and it's wrong, and they keep pushing, asking for money.
The person does what?
Other than that, their financial situation is fine. They have kind of month-to-month stuff going on, but they need to get a bit of that transaction that they made in the past. So, do you think is that person eligible?
The person they're meeting their necessities, but they think they need money. Yeah.
like on a monthly basis, but they say like they don't have like a stop,
Okay, so the person has they're able to meet their expenses, they're able to cover their expenses, but they're not at nisab, right? So can you give them zakah? Yeah, I mean, if you think they're going to put that money to good use, then you can pay zakah on that, right? Because if you think they're going to use that money because they're collecting money for something, then you.
give you like the proportion of your house, either for such an amount of time. I don't know what they say that in Arabic, in our term they call it girami,
Hmm.
you give it for a certain amount of time, and then they pay you all at once. It's like a whole length of 2 or 3 years of
Okay.
contract, and then they pay at once, and then they live for that month.
Yeah, I think that one maybe we can take that specific scenario after the seminar is over, inshallah. Yeah, but generally speaking, if someone's below the nisab, then yes, you can give them zakah as long as you know they're putting that zakah money to good use, right? But if they are above the nisab, then no. The idea is to get them to nisab. The idea is to get them to that level.
What if I have doubts about if they are under that? What if they like that person?
If you have doubts about it, you can ask. You can ask them if they're eligible, and then if you still have doubts, then you can choose not to give them zakah, right? That's up. You have to make some subjective choices at the end of the day. You have to decide, is this person eligible, not eligible? You have to do your due diligence. So there's not a clear-cut answer, like we don't know exactly this person is, this person isn't, which is why you do have to do a little bit of due diligence to find out who is eligible and who's not.
He explains the situation that is like in a very dire situation.
Yeah.
If he doesn't get that help, he will be kicked out of the
Yeah, if someone's going to be kicked out of their house because they don't have the money to pay for it, then yeah, they should be zakah eligible, right? Because they're not able to make the basic necessities meet. They're even below the nisab in that scenario. Other questions?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Regarding this cryptocurrency, Bitcoin.
Yeah. Cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. So think of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin as just currency. It's a medium of exchange. It's a measure of value. It's a store of value, right? So think of it as just like money. So whatever the value of that cryptocurrency is on the due date, you pay on that. Now, is cryptocurrency something you should invest in? Islamically and not. That's a separate conversation we can get into outside of the scope of this seminar. Maybe we can have that some other day, inshallah. Okay, Jazakumullah khairan. I think we answered most of the questions. If there's more questions, I can stick around for a few minutes and we can go through them. But other than that, inshallah, we'll end over here, just about at the 2-hour mark. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.